everyone, how are you today? This is Mark. I'm doing just great. Thanks for asking. You have to be quiet during a lecture at university. Or you must be quiet during a lecture at university. Evil has to be the reason for such deaths. Or evil must be the reason for such deaths. Students have to learn English for their future career, or students must learn English for their future career. In this lesson, we're going to look at the difference between have to and must. Let me tell you first that have to is used mostly in American English. Must is used also in American English, but on property signs. For example, you will see that written. Visitors must report to admission offices, for example. Must is slowly disappearing from the language, so it's 50% less used now than in the past. So it's slowly disappearing from the language. They're both modal verbs and they follow the following rules. So with have to, the positive sentence would follow the following formula. Subject plus have to plus the base of the verb plus the object, and then the time expression, if any. With must instead, the formula goes subject plus must plus the base of the verb plus object, and then the time expression, if any. Now, this is easy. Remember that must, we don't need to. This is one thing to remember. When we write a negative sentence instead, we need the subject plus the auxiliary plus not, the auxiliary of the tense we are using in this case. So it could be do, does, did, or will, etc. plus have to, plus the base of the verb, plus object, and then the time expression. If you use it in a negative sentence, have to, it means no obligation or necessary. Instead, if you use must in a negative sentence, the formula would be subject plus must plus not plus the base of the verb plus the object, and then the time expression, if any. And in this case, if you use must in a negative sentence, it means prohibition. I will give you two examples. So the first one with have to. You don't have to call me before coming over. It's not necessary. This is what I'm saying. With must instead, you mustn't drink bleach. It'll kill you. So you cannot, you're not allowed, or it will kill you anyway if you drink bleach. So you mustn't. Now, let's go on with the interrogative sentence. So we need WH question word, if any. So WH question word would be where, who, how, what, etc. Then we need the auxiliary, then the subject, then have to, and then the base of the verb, and maybe the object or the time expression in a question. So it depends here, it will change. If you want to watch a lesson on making questions, you can click here. For an interrogative sentence with must, you have to use WH question word if you have one, then must, then the subject, then the base of the verb, and then the time expression or object, if any. This is very, very rare, okay? We usually don't use it in a question. Okay, now the most important thing is when and how we use these two. The first rule is use the modal verb have to express strong obligation. This strong obligation is based on a rule or law, and obviously have to is impersonal. So somebody else tells you to do something. Impersonal. Instead, must, we use it to indicate a personal, so personal recommendation. Now, I have two examples, and let me show you the two examples that I wrote. These are the examples that I gave you at the beginning. And the first one with have to is, you have to be quiet during a lecture at university, I said. In this case, have to is a strong obligation, right? I'm telling you because you cannot speak during a lecture at university. Instead, if I say you must be quiet during a lecture at university, this is a recommendation I'm saying to someone, okay? This is the difference. Then another difference or another usage of have to is to say how likely something is. And in my example, in the introductory example, was evil has to be the reason for such deaths. Has to be the reason. And this is likely. So it's probable that evil was the reason for such deaths. Instead, if you use it with must, use must to express conviction or certainty about something. So evil must be the reason for such deaths. So I'm convinced that evil was the reason for such deaths. Now the third usage is for have to indicate that it's important to do something. For example, the introductory example was, students have to learn English for their future career. By this example, I'm saying that it's important for students to learn English for their future careers. Instead, if I use it with must, indicates a necessity. So students must learn English for their future career. So it's necessary for students to learn English for their future career. So you can see that it changes meaning. They can be both used with the past. So the past of have to is had to. Remember that if you make a question or a negative sentence, you need did for the past, right? Of have to. Now instead, if you use must with the past, it would be must have plus past participle. For the future, in the have to, we have will have to. So I will have to do something next week, for example. So it is used. For the must, we don't have future, and so we use have to. And one last thing that I want to say about have to is that you can use have got to in British English instead of have to. It's the same thing. Now, let's recap. So in this lesson, we talked about the difference between have to and must. Have to is used for a strong obligation. Instead, must is for necessity, certainty, or personal recommendation. So use have to for a strong obligation based on a rule, a law imposed by an institution or by somebody. Must instead is personal and is used in the present and in the past. In the future, we just used have to.
Can you make some more examples? Write them on the comment section below. Remember to click the subscribe button and ring the bell. Give us a thumbs up. And see you guys on the next Mundo Inglés America video. Peace out.